Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast. Today, I am interviewing psychic expansion coach Viola Hug. Yes, she is my sister. We are related. And I've always been inspired by my older sister's relationship. It is probably the most inspiring relationship that I've ever witnessed in my life. And that is because Viola and her partner Nick are literally the perfect role model of what you would think about when you think of twin flame or just two people that are in a relationship that are so in alignment and so meant to be together. And I absolutely love the love that they have for each other, the peace and harmony they have in their relationship, but at the same time, they have a lot of lust, spice, sex, fun, happiness, lots of laughter. So I am interviewing Viola today on a relationship, and she gives us some tips on how we can manifest our dream partner and someone who is in alignment with us and how to maintain a happy and healthy relationship with them. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast episode. If you want to stalk my sister on Instagram, you can find her at Viola Hug. I hope you guys can learn something from this podcast episode and be inspired. Hello, Viola Hug. Welcome back to the Elevate Your Soul podcast.
Hello, Orosz. It's good to be back.
Instead of asking you what elevates your soul again, I'm going to ask, what did you do today, or what do you do in your daily routine that elevates your soul?
Ooh, I think in my daily routine, like one of the things that I really value for myself is I have built a pretty good practice at checking in with how I feel and what I need.
Yeah.
And so on a daily basis, that looks really different. Like some days I really, really desire to be in meditation and sage and pull angel cards. And other days I feel like just like snuggling with my husband. Some days it's getting outdoors, but
Yeah.
at the core essence, it's really about just checking in with myself and seeing what I need.
Yeah. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
You're super intuitive, aren't you?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so the reason for today's podcast episode is literally because the relationship you have with Nick, I think, is so special and so unique from what I've seen in other people's relationships or from what I've experienced. It's like you and Nick are the perfect example of what people dream about when they say like, oh, I want my ideal partner, and when I find him, life is going to be great and we're going to get along so well and we're always going to make each other happy. And like so many people are like, that's bullshit. Like, don't dream like that. You don't get happiness from other people. You find happiness within yourself. And I fully agree with that. But the quality of the relationship that you have with Nick, the fact that you guys like, I haven't lived with you for a while now, but when I used to live with you, you guys never would argue. You guys would never like get into fights or anything like that. And you've been together for how many years now?
Almost 10.
Almost 10 years. Yeah, like a
Mm-hmm.
decade. And
Yeah.
you're still like obsessed with each other when you haven't seen each other for a while, like 2 hours. You're like, oh my God, I've missed you. Like you have that like that spark that people have in their relationship in the first 6 months or maybe a year or maybe 2 years, depending on what kind of relationship it is. You've maintained that for as long as you've been in a relationship with this man. And like, I am hungry to know how that is, how you maintain a relationship like that. And I also want to do this podcast interview to help inspire people that this type of relationship is real and you can have this type of relationship. And I'm tired of dreaming for this type of relationship and then people telling me I'm being unrealistic. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's like good to mention that the whole reason why we decided to do this episode is because we were having a conversation about this and you're like, how realistic do you think it is to have a relationship like that? And I was like, well, I can tell you like literally off the top of my head, 10 couples that have a similar relationship to what Nick and I have where They have a huge amount of respect for each other. They love spending time together. They have passion. They have intimacy. They have, they still challenge each other to grow, but it's from such a beautiful, harmonious space.
Yeah.
And then it kind of led to the conversation of like, well, you really do see what you believe is possible for yourself. And I think
Love that. Yeah.
that's like a really big thing to keep in mind, is that for me, it's not unusual for me to see people in relationships like mine, because I know that it's possible. So I see it more,
Yeah.
right? Like, I guess, I don't know whether I attract it because it's the vibration, or I'm looking for it, or whatever it is, but I definitely do see it a lot, you know? So it's not even just with my relationship, but it's many relationships. And I feel like it's a complex topic, and there's so many ways that we can go into it. But I mean, I think at the core of it, Nick and I are like really good friends as well, you know, like we actually really like each other a lot.
Yeah.
We think we're hilarious. We can just be like 100% ourselves with each other,
Mhm.
and we just have a good time with each other in that sense. But then on a like more deeper level in the relationship, we both desire to be in this relationship. And I think that's a key part.
Right.
And before I was in this relationship, I didn't know that it was possible to feel this either. Right?
Exactly.
Like, I really thought that relationships came with sacrifice. They came with like, well, that's good enough, or
Yeah.
that feels, you know, it feels
Or we
good.
need to
And
argue because that's just completely normal in relationships, and we're gonna have.
exactly, like it's normal to feel like you can't show parts of yourself in a relationship, and it's normal to, you know, for one person to be in it more than the other, or it's
Right.
normal for, right, like there's all these things that didn't actually feel good to me in a relationship, but I didn't question them because I didn't expect there to be something better.
And you didn't
And
experience
so
it
yeah, exactly. And so when I met Nick, I was like, oh my gosh,
yet.
what they say is true. Like, you can have that feeling, and you do know when you know kind of feeling. And so, like,
Yeah.
first and foremost, we both desire to be in the relationship. And what that means is I want to be the best version of myself in the relationship. And I want to do things that honor him in the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, he really wants to be in a relationship with me, which means that he wants to be the best version of himself for me, and he wants to do things that he know honor me in the relationship.
Right.
And so it's not that, I mean, we were young when we met each other. Like, Nick was only 20 and I had just turned 22. He was just about to turn 21.
Yeah.
And so we were super young, and there was still things I was healing and I was working through. And I do,
For sure.
like, we weren't in our most enlightened space when we met each other, but it was still amazing from the beginning.
Yeah.
But like, I think there was parts of me that was really like looking for a partner, but there was also parts of me that I was also really working on myself, you know, like I can't say that we were so enlightened that we were like
No.
fully happy and whatever within ourselves when we met. But I
Exactly.
think it's evolved into that through both of us being so like obsessed with personal growth and like
Yeah.
wanting to be better people. Like, it's not a need. It's not a codependency, but it's like, desire is the best word. It's like, I desire him in my life. I choose him every single moment. And that goes both ways.
Right.
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 So it's not that I need him to fulfill something,
Mhm.
but I 100% will choose him every single time.
Right.
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 uh,
I wonder if with a lot of other
yeah.
couples, people are in a relationship with someone who they are questioning if they're the one.
Yeah.
Like,
I
oh,
see it all the time.
yeah, I'm not really sure he's the one, but it's really good for now. And we had really good times together, and I like so many things about him or her.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where we really argue, and there are these values that we have that are not in
Mm-hmm.
alignment with each other, but that it's not enough to make them decide to end the relationship. They still want to be in it. And I guess that's
Yeah.
you have relationships with more friction. Not that that's a reason to have friction in a relationship,
Exactly.
but
Like, you can have different values and you can have different
yeah,
things. And I mean, you can find each other and yourself within a relationship as well. It's not like those things are suddenly like canceled out because you're in a relationship. Um, and there's some things that Nick and I also have different views on, but it's like, it doesn't come into, it doesn't, affect our relationship in the way, like, and there's so many other things that I want to add to this because there's so
Yeah.
many other layers, but yeah, sometimes I think that does happen. It's like the settling energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting though, because I think you really have to own whatever decision. Like if you're with someone and you're questioning whether you should be with them, or if you're with them and you don't like the fact that you argue, you really have to make a choice. Are you going to be half in, or all the way out, or all the way in? Because, or like half in doesn't work, like half in is always leaves space for it not feeling enough, it not satisfying you enough, him not being enough, her not being enough, that not being enough. Like there's always a not enoughness when we ourselves don't fully own our decision, right? So we either have to decide we are 100% out, like I am not dealing with this, I do not desire to make this work, I do not desire to continue a relationship with this person. Or on the other end of the spectrum, we have to say I'm fully in, which means that when they eat annoyingly and chew their food in a way that annoys you, you love them anyway, and you choose to love them in that moment anyway. When they do something and they say something to you that triggers you, and they know you don't like it when they say that, but they're also human, they made a mistake and they said it to you anyway, you can still love them in that moment and honor the fact that they're a human. And guess what? They made a mistake like you probably have a million times as well, right? Like you have to choose to fully own whatever decision. So whether that's your decision to be with them, you have to be with them. Like you have to choose to love them through that. And then sometimes in that space, like when we fully make that decision, we start to see things differently, and then things shift for us. But being half in, questioning, doubting, I'm in it, I'm not, like that is just not, like nothing in life works when you're lukewarm. It's just like blah. Like ugh.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't like it. Yeah. To the point where like some couples, like when something will, when shit hits the fan or whatever, and there's an argument, it's like really uncool when one person's like, oh, well, I don't know if I want this relationship anymore. Like to say that when you're in a relationship with someone, it's like the other partner is just like, oh, well, like, you know what I mean? Like you probably never had, I don't know if you've even ever had that, but I've had relationships with people who are like, yeah, like times get tough and they're like, oh, I don't sure if I want this relationship anymore. And it just reminded me about the whole, like not being fully in, even if it's not half in, half out, it's like there's still a small part that's like not 100% in. And I think that's still that small little part that where you're not 100% in creates a lot of room for, as you said, feeling unsatisfied or tension in the relationship.
It's like not creating safety. Like in a relationship, I feel like that both people should feel safe. And I think that it is like a big ego check, and it is sometimes it can be like a little bit like we all have the right to be self-righteous. We all get to be like, well, no, he hurt me or she hurt me or they did this and I'm mad and I deserve to be mad, and or I deserve to be sad, or I like, of course. But when we're desiring excellence, and like especially when we combine these conversations of like personal growth and relationships, when we desire excellence, we really need to have a level of self-responsibility where the only reason that is because we want the other person to know that you're not, they don't get to just have you. It's a privilege to be with you. Right. What do you mean? Like it's almost like we are willing to hurt the other person to make ourselves feel right. And ouch, that is sometimes a bit of a kick in the gut. But I think it's one of the things where in relationships things really do get a little bit complicated when we confuse our feeling with always feeling that we need to be right, or that we need to be justified in how we feel. We actually rip the other person, we hurt the other person. And we say that, we do that by saying we're going to leave. We do that by saying things we know will hurt them, like that are tender spots for them. We do that by bringing up things in the past. We do that in so many ways, and it's kind of like how we feel we claim our power. But when we're talking about a relationship where two people should be coming into it as equals, that is not respect for the other person. That is doing something on purpose to be a dick. Like really. And I know in the moment it doesn't feel like that because emotions are high, intelligence is low. you know, it's one of those things. But in a relationship, people do deserve to feel safe. And I think, you know, I know, like, obviously there's multiple kinds of relationships, and just to speak for a minute to like just the basics of like a hetero couple, even though the masculine feminine energies are always in all relationships. But I think sometimes it's really sad because men in relationships often get like, I feel like they have it really hard sometimes because there's so much expectation on them. They shouldn't feel emotional. They're not emotional enough. They should, you know, they should provide. They're not being protective enough. They're not loving us enough. Like there's all of these kind of like double standards for them. And actually for men, it is incredibly important for them to feel safe in a relationship, which is why sometimes men will poke you and prod you and annoy you, and just to kind of like push the limits to see, you know, what they can get away with in kind of like a joking or loving way, because for them to know that you'll always be there is one of the like things that will make a man feel the most secure and the most like they can open up to, the most that they can be there for you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, but the women also deserve to feel that at all times.
I think it's the same the other way around.
Oh, it is. It totally is. I just, you know, specifically speaking to men, because I feel like sometimes for men in a relationship, there's more of a double standard for that.
Yeah. True.
In like the general and so it's like people deserve to feel safe. So if we really desire to be in a relationship where we have mutual respect, we have that love, we have that connection, having self-responsibility over who we choose to be in a relationship and how we choose to project that onto the other person is incredibly important.
Yeah, can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, the example that I was just giving is a perfect one of saying, you know, like, I want to leave, or I'm, you know, I might leave, or maybe this relationship isn't what I thought it would be, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it also comes through in other areas, like even things like, you know, sometimes we do the silent treatment because it gives us power in the relationship. And I don't think a relationship should be about who's in power. You know what I mean? Like really at the core essence, it is mutual respect. And
it's not a competition. You're on the same
it isn't
as each other.
And this is the same thing. So people talk about arguing, and this doesn't mean that Nick and I never have something that we don't see eye to eye on. That's not true. There's many times when he annoys me, I annoy him. We see things in a different perspective. We are hungry. We say something mean to each other. Like there's moments, but I think the thing that is at the forefront for both of us is it's not me against him. It's not him against me. Exactly. We are on the same page. So when we're in a situation like that, we're looking to figure it out, not to be right.
Exactly.
It's not about winning a fight or an argument. It's not about coming out feeling like we're on top and they feel bad. And so we feel better about ourselves because we gained one up on them in that argument. We don't see eye to eye. That's okay. Like Nick and I are also great at challenging each other to grow and challenging each other's perspectives. Like if I am coming from a place that feels not very nice to him, he'll tell me, and vice versa. And if it's like a value or a belief or something we need to work through, we're happy to talk about it. You know, both of us can be feisty as well, and we can be like, well, no, and well, yes, but you know, like we can get a little bit like that, but it's always at the core, how can we figure this out? And I still honor you, but I'm also challenging you a little bit right now.
Yeah, totally.
You know, but the goal is at the end of the conversation to feel like we're on the same page, at least in the fact that we respect each other in the moment.
And respect each other's decisions too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And and it's both ways. Like I will respect him and he will respect me.
Yeah. That's a huge part, is the intentions of another partner. So what you were saying before, like, is this person going out to actually hurt you because you triggered them, or because they want power over you, or they want to be right? The intention behind that, whether they're conscious of it or not, is to sometimes hurt you. Yeah. And it's like, do you want to be in a relationship where you're both intentionally hurting each other because you're triggering each other, or you're feeling challenged? So,
yeah, and
Yeah.
And I mean, like what you said there is such a good point, like intentionally or unintentionally. Most of the time, this is unintentional. I don't think people are like, I'm
Yeah.
going to get in an argument and my goal is to hurt you. It's
Exactly.
because we feel hurt.
Mhm.
So that's our automatic response. And in society, you know, like, I mean, everyone has different examples of what relationships mean.
Yeah.
But most of us grew up with examples of relationships in our life, right?
Mhm.
Whether they were super great, amazing relationships, whether they were destructive relationships, whether they were what we saw on movies and we idolized,
Yeah.
whether it's what we, you know, through our own hurt, how we stepped into relationships. Like, you know, like I know when I was first in relationships, I was in a point in my life where I was very hurt. So I wasn't actually looking for a wholesome connection. I was looking to fill a hole. Like I was looking for
Right.
to fill pain, to make myself feel better about pain I had in my life,
Right.
right? Because it was just after dad died. You know, I was really like I was 16, so I was in a prime age where I was interested in dating, and I was just not in a place where and that's what comes back to what you said before. It's not about filling a hole. Like happiness comes from within,
Yeah.
like, but I was in a place where I was looking to have somebody validate me or
Mhm.
somebody make me feel a particular way.
Yeah.
And when that's what we're seeking in a relationship, that's very dangerous, because if they ever do anything that's not to how we expect them, then it's us that's hurt and we're the hurt ones. And then when we're hurt, you know, emotions high,
You hurt
intelligence low,
them.
we react in a way that hurts people. Hurt people,
Yeah.
right? So it's not that we have, I don't think that people are purposely doing this in relationships,
Okay.
but if we were to get really honest with ourselves and we really desire to grow in
Mhm.
our current relationship, or to attract and manifest a relationship that is like you know, like this
Something that we
beautiful,
desire.
yeah,
Yeah.
synergistic relationship, then it really does require us to do this self work and to have this self responsibility. And also, like, as much as I said, it's like respect on both parts,
Mhm.
sometimes we have to lead in that. Sometimes we can't like we can't, I guess, like, we're not in respect of our partner if just because they didn't respect us in the way that we wanted, we suddenly now don't respect them,
No.
right? Because we can expect of them a level of growth as well that we haven't yet mastered in ourselves.
Mm. Mm.
I think that especially goes for people that are in current relationships. Like, you can't just pretend just because you suddenly realize you want to respect your partner more, that suddenly they're going to automatically respect you more the minute that
Right.
you decide to respect them.
Right.
Respect is actually respecting their own growth and their own transition through this as you transition,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when that means you grow closer, you grow apart,
Uh-huh.
that's a possibility,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to new relationships as well, the good thing is that when you really have this as a standard in your life and you set this as a priority to be this kind of woman or to be this kind of man,
Yeah.
then you are attracting a whole different caliber of person.
Yeah.
And it kind of sets the tone from the beginning of the relationship, like when you choose to respect them
Yeah.
in a moment where it could be easy to be a bitch, you know,
Yeah.
or when you choose to set a boundary in a moment where you usually would have let it just like slide,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love what you said before too, how when you met Nick, you were so young and you weren't in a place where you were like, where you felt, I guess, conscious to be in a conscious relationship where you were trying to fill a void. So I think what a lot of people, or what I hear a lot, is this belief where you can't attract like your soulmate or the person who you desire to be with unless you've done your own work. Like, right, do your own work before you find a partner, even though I think relationships are like the best tool to grow and evolve in life.
Mm.
But you were able to manifest someone and attract someone into your life before you dealt with a lot of your past traumas, and
Yeah.
now
I
you're
mean,
still together.
at the point when I met Nick, I wasn't at the pinnacle of my growth, but I was more conscious at that point.
Yeah.
I'd realized my patterns at this point, and I'd realized what I really didn't want, you
Right.
know? So I already had some form of boundary, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I don't know whether you call it like divine timing. Like, I don't know if you're, you know, if you're listening right now, you believe in soulmates or twin flames or any of that kind of stuff. But like Nick and I are twin flames. Like there is, there is a connection that you can't deny. It's not like we met and we're like, I wonder if I like him. It was like we met and exchanged phone numbers. The following weekend I went to visit him because I was living in a different city at the time. And that weekend he was already like, will you be with me forever? And I was like, of course. Like, what else am I going to do with my life? You know, like it was instantaneously connection, but everything about the connection felt so right. Like I had already gotten to the point where I knew what I wasn't willing to handle and I knew what I wasn't willing to handle. But also the energetic connection was so strong with Nick and I. Like it really, really was. It was just like, well, bam, like this is when you know kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well, because for a lot of people who are in relationships, me myself, with one of my exes, was like this constant questioning, like, oh, are we meant to be together? Are we not? And I think, to be honest, like, it sounds brutal, but if you're questioning if your partner is the one or if you should be with them, then they're not the one. And you shouldn't be.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think, and you know, and some people say, well, do you think everyone can find the one? And do you think everyone can have that? And I think that everyone does have matches in this world that are that type of relationship. You know what I mean? And maybe it's not like your quote unquote twin flame or whatever, but I do believe that everyone has energetic matches. Totally. And sometimes that energetic match for us isn't the right person because we're also not in the right place. Right. And the thing about Nick and I is that I do believe it was divine timing when we met, because we were both at kind of a crossroads in our life. Like I already was starting to work on myself. I was realizing my patterns. But when we met each other, it was like the catalyst to both of us knew we wanted to be more and have more. Like meeting him made me want to be a better person. Yeah. So it was like, it was also, and that's where the growth within the relationship comes from, you know, and then that was important to us. And at the beginning of our relationship, we always said like, oh, our relationship's so effortless. Like we don't really have to try. Yeah. But then when we really started to reflect, and especially in the recent years, like, I mean, I feel like we're only growing closer and like we're even better a relationship now than we ever have been. Because we're also more conscious of a lot of these things. But even at the start, when it felt effortless, it was, I think at the core of it, we both chose each other in every moment. We didn't ever want to choose to hurt each other. Like being the right person in the relationship was never a goal for us. It was always to love each other and to get through things together. Yeah. And that in itself is actually kind of work on a relationship, but it just felt effortless because we both wanted it, you know, like it wasn't like I was like, oh, I guess I'll have to choose you today. Like it was like, yes, I get to choose you today. This is the best day ever.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, so glad you're in my life. Can you tell people, just so people get an idea of like how much time you actually spend together? Because you guys spend also more time together than most couples, because some people might be listening and be like, oh, well, maybe she travels a lot and maybe they don't spend that much time together. Maybe he's at work all day or whatever. Can you just explain your lifestyle with Nick?
We spend 24/7 together, basically. So since Nick and I met, like in our first year, we did long distance actually, because we were living in different places. Yeah. But then after that, we moved in together.
Was that the first whole year?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we met in December 2010, and I finished university at the end of 2011. So that whole year was long distance. Yeah. And then for after that, we like moved in together and we did work and stuff like that. But then later we also were becoming more entrepreneurial. So we were spending way more time together because we both didn't necessarily have to be at jobs and stuff. And then it kind of just got taken to the next level when about 2 years ago, we decided we would just start traveling full time. Yeah. And basically since that decision, the only times we're not together is if it like Nick goes to the gym without me, or if he goes grocery shopping, because I don't like grocery shopping. So that's
a lot of times you still go for the drive.
Sometimes I come for the drive. Yeah. But we really do spend so much time together. And I mean, there are things that we like to do, like
even go more in depth to that. Like that is crazy. So you were traveling and you weren't just like traveling like, oh, we're going to travel and be entertained and we're going to like stay at resorts and go to all these concerts and festivals. Like you were traveling, you were in Africa for however long. like in an Airbnb where you basically were on lockdown and you didn't leave your apartment, your Airbnb, and he was with you there like the whole time. So it's not just like you guys are traveling and you're entertained by all this stuff, because a lot of couples, they get along. It's easier to get along when they're traveling, right? And then they come home and then they get stuck in their routine. They're like, oh, we're like bickering, we're not getting along, so let's like plan our next vacation.
Well, full-time travel is a very different ball game than holiday travel. Like, let me tell you, and that's why like we really, really loved it for a year and a half, but then it was like, oh my gosh, we need a house. Like we need somewhere to put our things, because full-time travel is no joke. Like it is actually super exhausting for me. Like never, because we also, it's not like we had a parent's home that we could store our stuff at. Like we literally sold all of our stuff, and the only things we owned were our 2 carry-on bags. And so it's like we never had anywhere that we could go home and be like, oh, just rest our head at home for a minute. You know, it's like, no, everything was like a new location, a new place, new things to do. And there were like really fun things that we did on the travel, but because it was full time as well, it's still kind of like our lifestyle. Like I was building my business, and we were living and eating like you normally would, you know, like it's not like we ate out at restaurants every single day. We were getting Airbnbs that had kitchens and all the things. So and then that last month in Morocco, we got an Airbnb in kind of like the wrong location, you could say. And the 2 times I tried to leave the apartment, I got like hoarded back inside, and they're like, this is not a safe area for women. So I was not allowed to leave the Airbnb. So that was great. A month. I wrote like half my book that month though. That was fine.
Good. You used the time wisely. You're like, all right, do while I'm here. Yeah.
But one thing I did want to say is like the thing is that even like we do spend all our time together, and it is crazy. Like when he's out, when he comes home, I'm like at the door. I'm like excited. I'm like, yes, he's home. Like, you know, it is like seriously that feeling. But then at the same time as well, like I do think there is an importance in having like your own sense of self and your own interests and your own space as well. And like depending on the time and things like that, like I like to do things like I have goddess days that I call them, like they're just like kind of like me days where I do whatever. Like maybe I go to the spa, or maybe I go shopping, or maybe I go get my makeup done, or I go do things that are just kind of like my own thing, and then we meet in the evening and we have dinner together, or we have a date night or something. And Nick has his own interests and hobbies, you know, he's a musician and he does other things, and there's just like we still have our own hobbies. And I think it's like, it's not like we're like spending all our time together because we're like dependent and need each other, but we just, our lives, we don't work jobs, you know, and so our lifestyles just mean we're together pretty much all of the time. But there's still like, I think an important aspect to really just feel like, you know, you really have a space for yourself within that. But the fact that we spend so much time together is like a blessing for us. We love it. So
exactly. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that we haven't touched on today?
I don't know. Like, I think that's like probably, I mean, communicating with each other is really important. Like letting, and just like, so this is in our relationship, but also in other relationships that I know that are really like solid relationships, communicating how we feel, what our desires are, what we need support in, like in a loving way. I'll let him know if like, and usually like, and I think this is actually a really good point as a final point to add, is like, if I'm getting annoyed by something, for example, which does happen, or if I'm feeling unsupported, or if I'm feeling a particular way in the relationship, my first instinct isn't now. It was more at the start of the relationship, but again, we'd always figure it out because we were in it together. But now it's like taken to a next level, because now it's not like I'm like, oh, you're doing this, it's making me feel unsupported. It's what I do is I always check in, because guaranteed behind that, there's always a trigger within me. There's something within me that's not feeling worthy. There's something within me that's not feeling good enough. There's something within me that's feeling like I'm not there for myself. It's like always actually a mirror to something going on within me. So that's like another tip that I recommend, is that when we do notice ourselves feeling irritated or feeling annoyed or feeling any particular way that doesn't feel like the energy we want in our relationship, it's easy to be like, oh, it's because he's doing that or she's doing that.
Yeah,
guaranteed.
like that as well. Where I'm like, why am I being irritated by like things he's not even like meaning to do to
Yeah.
me? And I totally know like something is up with me, but and then that's almost the easier part. The hardest part is knowing what the hell is up with me.
Exactly. And so like I like to give myself space to kind of really go inward and ask myself those questions. And I'm not afraid to be a little bit butthurt about stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like if my ego gets bruised, I'm okay with it, because I also, in my entrepreneurial journey, it's like one of the biggest things that I've seen is like usually the things that are where our biggest growth is are the things we don't want to admit to ourselves, because it will bruise our ego for a minute. You know what I mean? Like it'll make us feel like, I don't know, like we don't have as much control, or we don't have as much power, or maybe we aren't as, you know, quote unquote good as we thought we were, even though the truth is we are always worthy and amazing. It's just we forget that at times. But you know, like I check in with myself, and then when I go into a conversation to bring it up, I always recognize, and I say, like, I don't know, like not exact words, but I'll always have a communication. I'll say, I've been feeling this way and I know this is the reason, but here's what's going on that's like amplifying that, or here's how I'm working on it. And it's like we can always find a solution. And even small things, like we're really into human design. My husband's a projector, so for him recognition is really important. I know you're a projector as well. Recognition is really important. So it's like really, and that's not my natural thing, is to be like in full recognition of other people all the time. And even though for projectors it is important they recognize themselves, it's not recognition from other people they need. But it's still like I do my best to honor his needs as a projector, and recognize them and thank him and all the things. And for me, it's really important, I'm a manifestor, that I'm informed, right? Like I like to know what's going on. So sometimes I feel like irritated or whatever, and it's just like something little, like I don't know what he's doing in the kitchen. Like it's something stupid, you know, like just something really small. Or when we're driving somewhere, I don't know where we're going, and I'm like, where are we going? And he's like, don't worry about it, I know where we're going. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you because I just like to be informed. And then he's like, oh, you know, so it's small things like that. Like we get to know each other, and we continue to get to know each other in the relationship. So yeah, communication, and always having that kind of self-responsibility with that, first and foremost. Mutual respect, but knowing that we have to lead the way in that. Like mutual respect does not mean that we expect it from them. Like ideally we both have it in the relationship, but we set the tone for it. And then doing our best not to react out of emotion in a moment, and and really just hold that like teamwork dynamic, I guess, at the forefront.
I think it's good to not overcomplicate things as well. Like I think relationships, when it comes down to it, like as a baseline, it is pretty simple to have a good relationship, like respect, self-awareness, self-love.
And I think these things also become effortless, like you know, yes, there's a point where it's like, oh, I have to realize this about myself, but it also becomes effortless, especially when you really want to be in the relationship. And that's why I say, like, if you're in a relationship right now and you're questioning it, make a decision. You know what I mean? Like make a decision. Either you're in it all the way and you're gonna choose this person no matter how they chew or what they say when they get annoyed. Like you're just gonna choose this person always, or don't. And that's it. And if you're wanting to manifest a relationship, then set these standards for yourself now. Like do this work on yourself, because of course you can still grow when you meet someone, but the level, you know, I do believe we manifest energetic matches for ourselves. So
and like for me as well, when you talk about like the chewing thing, or you don't like the way they like do something, for me it's like that's easy to love. Like I will love the shit out of someone who I know like is not meant to be in a relationship with, or I will love the shit out of my ex-boyfriend, you know, like even if there were things in the relationship where I was like, oh, that's like, for me those things are easy, like it's a little bit irritating, but I'm like, oh, whatever, it's cute and it makes them them. It's like you can still love the shit out of that stuff, but it's still like doesn't mean the relationship is meant to be.
Oh yeah. And it's more, I mean, I think everybody for themselves knows what it is in their relationship, you know what I mean? These are small examples, but sometimes it's we allow ourselves to get annoyed by the little things, which is why I gave that example. And sometimes that's how we self-sabotage ourselves. You know, things are going so well, it's like, what can I get annoyed at?
Wow.
Right. And that's probably more self-work, as, you know, how much love do you deserve, do you think you deserve to feel? Because
Right.
sometimes it comes back to that, and that's where the self-work is really a key part. Like, we can't expect our partner to fill that for us. Like, that's where we come in for ourselves.
Exactly. And that's where, although relationships are simple, that's where it gets complex, is like knowing, why am I feeling this way? Like, as you said, they may need to work on self-love and validating themselves. And other reasons for the self-sabotage, I believe some people self-sabotage the relationship because deep down they know it's not the right relationship. So they're actually sabotaging it because they know it's not right, but they don't have the courage to actually end that relationship.
Yeah. So, and it does take courage, because we get comfortable, and everyone has the fear, what if this is the best it will get? But I mean, the truth is that this is like, when we talk about our purpose, when we talk about our work, when we talk about wealth, when we talk about anything in our life, like, we actually do have access to exactly what we desire. We do. We live in a limitless, abundant universe. And it is scary, but we can't wait to see that in our life before we before we make room for it. Like, we have to make room for it first.
Right.
Then, calibrate our energy the best we know how, and then attract the new thing in. But I mean, and then it comes back to the question. It's like, I've been able to answer this how I do now at, when I was in my kind of more broken relationship years? Definitely not. But it's like, you really have to get to a point where it's like, you would rather feel wholesome alone than broken with someone.
Totally. I love that. I love that. And what was that quote at the very beginning that you said initially when we were talking about this?
Just like, what you see more of what you believe to be true in the world.
See more of what you believe to be true in the world. I love that. I want to end it on that note. So good. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Hey YouTube fam, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button below. And if you think a friend, a family member, or just someone you know who could benefit from this podcast episode, please share this video with them. And if you've been enjoying the Elevate Your Soul podcast, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for new episodes weekly. Thank you.